Welcome to the AI Ireland podcast, your window into the world of AI innovation on the island of Ireland. Join us as we explore how AI is harnessed to tackle both business and societal challenges, revealing the cutting-edge solutions emerging from this vibrant AI community. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates and insights in the world of AI. I hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world today. We are speaking to the CEO of Lua Health, Ger Perdisatt. Ger, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Delighted to be here, Mark.
So, Ger, people probably would have heard your name from working in Microsoft, where you had a fantastic career over the years. The first question I have for you, before we even jump into Lua Health and what you actually do around AI-driven workplace wellness solutions, is what made you make the choice to join Lua rather than, I don't know, hundreds of other companies that probably would have popped up that would have maybe grabbed your attention because of the role that you had at Microsoft?
It's a great question, Mark. And over the years, I would have been approached about a bunch of different things. And, I always felt it was kind of going to be difficult if I was going into a similar enterprise technology space. It'd be kind of difficult to top Microsoft in some ways. And not just for the technology, but just for, I suppose, so many different cultural refreshes and changes of, organizational style over the year. I did my MBA in Smurfit like in the early 2010s, but I always said to people, like, Microsoft felt like it was an ongoing MBA, because you're always learning something about, things at massive scale. So my thinking was, I'll struggle to probably get as interested in another enterprise technology company. I always had a desire to actually build something, and particularly in the technology space, particularly in the mental health space, it's an area I feel really strongly about. And the last couple of years I've been helping companies out, advising them on an informal basis. I was actually talking to the Lua team, and then this just came up. It was just fortuitous timing in some ways, in that Lua is searching for a new CEO. That itch had become unscratchable in terms of moving from Microsoft. It was just good timing.
Yeah. I think when you've got a natural gravitas, energy to go towards something, it really, really helps to because it's not like you're unhappy, but you just want to kind of go and try to go on that next journey and try it out. And there's never going to be a kind of a perfect time to doing anything, but if you've got an interest in the subject, it can really, really help within it. So when we actually look at your Lua Health, talk us through early detection of mental health. What does that actually really mean, and particularly from kind of a company perspective, because there's probably loads of symptoms around there, but maybe the kind of the root cause and how you can really kind of detect it early can make a big difference.
Well, you said it. Making a big difference is the critical piece here. If you look at the mental health space in general, particularly in a corporate perspective, it's incredibly vibrant, but probably also incredibly noisy in some ways, right? There's loads of providers doing loads of amazing stuff. And, I think one thing that everybody is trying to do, and I think there's probably broad consensus, if you can get ahead of the curve and help people before their issues get acute, you get a much, much better outcome. The Deloitte measured this some years ago, and they unambiguously said that early intervention is absolutely the gold standard when it comes to this. Now, we have a slightly different growth hypothesis, to pretty much everybody else out there. And it's kind of pretty simple, Mark. And I think it goes to a lot of the noisiness of the space, which is a lot of providers are asking employees to do something different, right? If you're starting to feel unwell, go somewhere else, fill out a survey, do a questionnaire, do something, right? And, the average individual is already incredibly burdened with, the number of context switches and app switches and stuff like that, they need to do during the course of their day anyway. Adding a tax when they're trying to help themselves is not, in our view, the right way to go. So we approach it differently. And the way we do it is, what we do is we assess language changes or linguistic changes in the corporate chat data that employees are naturally producing in their day-to-day. So if you use Teams, you use Slack, you use Zoom, any of those things, you're naturally creating this chat data when you're IMing somebody. And there's a really good body of scientific knowledge that will basically show that actually when you start to get more depressed or more anxious or more stressed, the way you write changes, the way you communicate changes. And it's not the obvious things like saying I'm more depressed or I'm stressed. It is those things, but it can also be much more subtle things, like you become more individual focused rather than group focused. So you use I versus we more pronouns more. You use less future tenses, right? You become more current state oriented rather than future oriented. And you become more absolutist in the words that you use. So you become less nuanced. So you have a tendency to say things more like I'm always this, or I'm never that, or this situation is always like this. So the way we do it in Lua is we effectively take that data, that corporate chat data that you're producing naturally anyway. We redact anything that's personally or corporately sensitive. And then our AI runs its kind of proprietary data set of these 25 to 30 linguistic markers on top of it. And it assesses, it gets a sense of, well, is your trajectory of mental health changing? And if it feels that there's a signal there that's actually worth intervening on, what it does is our chatbot in Teams or Slack or Zoom, whatever system you're using, it'll reach out to you and say, hey, Mark, just wondering how you're doing. We feel you may be getting a little bit stressed. Have you thought about some of the existing EAP or well-being assets that the company already has associated with this? And this is the critical thing. This is the secret sauce of what we're doing. What we're trying to do is, before the person is even asked for help, in some cases, before the person might even be aware that they could do with some help, our system is looking at it and reaching out and saying, hey, maybe these are some of the things that are, that could be beneficial for you. And it cuts to the heart of a lot of what corporations are trying to do in terms of their well-being and their wellness programs. A lot of those things are massively underutilized, and not through any fault of the company, not through any fault of the individual, but just the natural human condition of feeling, well, I don't need it now, so I don't really need to engage with it now. And when you become stressed or depressed or anxious, you become in some ways less rational, less logical in the way your thought processes work anyway. So it's more difficult for you to spot those signs anyway. So that's effectively what we're trying to do. We're trying to leverage deep tech, but do it in a way that's like deeply human at the same time.
Yeah, and I really like the proactive nature to that. And we were kind of chatting off air before. One of the things that kind of drove you to Lua was the underlying tech, as the enabler, that AI is enabler. And I think you were kind of saying to me, and I don't want to paraphrase, the underlying technology was really, really strong, but probably getting better at telling the story and actually amplifying it, because it was something there that you could actually build upon as you were kind of seeing the use cases of results and how it can be actually effectively used across corporations, because it's a very, very busy space and you need to have a really strong differentiator. And the world of sales and marketing is one thing, but if you can have a strong tech foundation, that's a very, very good play to scale.
You're absolutely spot on. And I think there's kind of three aspects to this, right? One is, as you say, is having a really, really clear and compelling story, which is effectively saying, look, we're not asking users to do anything different, and we're not asking organizations to invest in anything different in terms of their wellness programs. And when you say that to companies or individuals, they say, no, that can't be right. And you're saying, no, actually, you're already creating an awful lot of the signals, you just don't realize it. So it's about joining the dots in terms of that, and that's one of the things I'm just so incredibly enthused about. But beyond that, when we look at the tech, yeah, I sometimes joke that you can't spell the word fatigue without the letters A and I in it, and I do think, exactly as you say, there's an awful lot of noise along with that signal in the AI space, and being able to talk about how you are genuinely using it in very, very compelling ways, in very proactive ways to do that is important. One of the things actually that certainly when I talk to customers that they're actually most impressed about is not necessarily the tech, but how long Mihail, my co-founder and the team, have been working on the tech. Like, this was originally a university spin out. You know, the guys have been working on the underlying AI and ML models for 5 years now. And, so that was certainly before it was cool, before it was top of mind. And also, I think the other aspect as well is the fact that this was developed between an AI PhD student and a psychology PhD student at the time. So, it was based on clinical grade practice and technological grade practice. They were kind of really the two things that are resonating with people more. And, my job is just to kind of simplify all of those things and make it really easy, because, and you and I spoke about this a little bit, one of the things that I think organizations are afraid of in terms of getting into AI is it's going to cost me a lot on the way in, and if it doesn't work, it's going to cost me a lot on the way out. And being able to articulate with organizations, look, you can try things in a very, very secure way, and if it doesn't work, you can back out of it in a very seamless way, and you take your data with you and all that sort of stuff. And I think being able to talk to organizations about how to do that, and particularly, not everybody is a technologist. The more arcane the language you use to try and impress people, the more I think sometimes you lose people in the process as part of this. So particularly for non-technologists, being able to talk about the technology in ways that makes them feel confident, comfortable, but doesn't exclude them, is probably the biggest part of the challenge.
Yeah, and I think the lovely thing about now versus 6 years ago when I got involved in AI is the acronyms are getting diminished. And even prompt engineering, which although is still a thing, I expect in the next year or so, it's going to be so focused around natural language and slang that it will become less and less important. When we look at the balance for personalized mental health support, but also with the protection of employees' personal identifiable information. So how do you address potential concerns around confidentiality? Because for a lot of us, it's kind of like a delicate dance.
Oh, look, big time. And I think there's two aspects to this, right? First aspect is, and back to the discussion about the tech, this is actually one of those moments where it is worth showing the end users the outputs of the tech, right? So what we do is we will take a synthetic version of some chat data, right? That's before it gets redacted and anonymized. And what we'll do is we'll show that to users, right? Now it looks like a real conversation, but it's not a real conversation, right? We obviously wouldn't use that. And what we do then is we show them what that looks like after the redaction that we do. We have a sophisticated bespoke ensemble model that we use to do that, right, with a variety of different algorithms on it. And when you show users what it looks like afterwards, people get it straight away, because I mean, you read the sentences, and people go, well, I mean, you couldn't even identify, a rough demographic associated, because all you're left with, frankly, is pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, stuff like that. The way I describe it is anything name, noun, or number related pretty much gets taken out. And when people see it in operation, they go, okay, now I get that. So that's the first part. That's the privacy aspect. And then you talk to them about the security and the encryption, and also the fact that the technology is actually built so even if a manager wanted to, they can't get access to your data. There's physically no way for them to engage with the system to find out what Ger or Mark are actually engaging with or talking about. Once you start showing them, that's the way it's built, then people, I think, start to get it. And then the other aspect of it is, as well, is I think beyond that, there's almost an emotional reaction to this concept of, I'm being monitored in some way. Right, and I get that, and we absolutely understand that. And the way we approach it is kind of twofold. One is, like I say, that piece about here are all of the rational controls that we put around it, either architecturally or security or privacy or whatever. But then the other aspect of it is to get people to think about their aspect of their well-being that they already monitor on an ongoing basis, right? So if like me, you've got a smartwatch, you're kind of used to actually providing a service with some redacted telemetry about your well-being and getting some insights in return. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to be like a Fitbit for your brain as much as, you know, a Fitbit for your body. That's the way that we're effectively thinking about it. And when we do those two things in concert, I suppose the mind, the rational stuff, and then the heart, the emotional stuff, I think people get it. It tends to be a big change journey. It's not a conversation you can have once. With an organization, you have to have a really good change management framework. But if you do those things, and particularly if people start to feel that they're getting the value out of it, that's the main thing. We did it with an international customer a little while back. We did it in the Philippines. We did it in Colombia, and the user feedback was incredible. They really, really enjoyed it, and they felt that actually they had somebody to talk to about these things. You know, and there was a really interesting Oracle piece of research about 3 years ago that said 80% of people are more comfortable talking to a digital agent than their manager about their mental health. And you know, I think that's an important aspect of this, that we don't always want to talk to the person most proximate to us in terms of this, because let's face it, there is still in some cases some element of stigma or perceived stigma associated with this. So that's how we do it. You know, it's a kind of a multifaceted approach.
It's really interesting. I could go through all those different points, but if we look even at character AI, where you've had Google have invested 3 billion plus in that, if people don't know what character AI is, think of, you know, a perfect girlfriend, think of the perfect boyfriend, think of Super Mario, think about the class bully that you wish you interacted in a different way 20 years ago. You can create and engage with these avatars that are there, or you can go and create your own avatar. And what we're seeing is, I think we're getting 250 million site visits. It's a very, very, it's actually quite it's kind of biased towards women, are actually using it a lot more than men at the moment. But we're seeing that those emotional relationships, people want to role play, they want to have these conversations, they want to engage with people that get them. So again, it's not something that people who haven't used these things before thinking, you know, that sounds a little bit different than what I'm used to. If anyone's got an OpenAI ChatGPT account, you feel like saying please and thank you when it's engaging. I don't necessarily feel that when I'm using a Google search, right? So again, straight away, I'm in some type of relationship, whatever that is, but like you're feeling it's more trusting. So that's really, really good. You've also got a bit of a digital analytics, kind of data analytics piece from a visualization perspective. Talk to me a little bit about how Lua Health's data analytics play, particularly in helping managers identify maybe health trends within the workforce, and also how do you ensure that those actionable insights are then implemented effectively? Because I'm guessing there's going to be kind of these trends that are going to be showing.
Oh, look, you're again spot on. So you think of all of that data that's being analyzed in terms of this, and obviously it gets anonymized and it gets aggregated when it comes to managers getting insights. So, you know, the first thing I would say is managers, leaders in an organization don't get to see this beyond a level that's even roughly identifiable to individual teams or certainly individual users. But what organizations get is effectively this ongoing longitudinal insight into what's driving mental health, employee engagement, employee motivation within their organization. And that's done no surveys, no questionnaires, no pulses, whatever. This is literally organically created by this, you know, continuous assessment of the underlying linguistic markers. And that's really powerful because everybody knows the limitations of surveys. You know, they've been around for over 100 years. They were originally introduced as part of the First World War, believe it or not. Soldier morale was where it came from. So having a 21st century solution for 21st century problems is kind of at the heart of the way that we're approaching it. And what happens is, the way it works is managers get that continuous insight into what's going on in their organization. And to give you an example, we'd an organization recently, and when it looked at things that were driving stress within the organization, it was all of the obvious things, right? So it could have been some home-related stuff, so not related to the work environment, but, you know, it was impacting on it. So family came up, you know, sometimes in terms of it. Managers came up quite frequently as a challenge. We know this, right? That's one of the biggest, determinants of workplace happiness. But interestingly, something that came up in the word cloud for this particular customer was two words that I didn't recognize. One was water and the other was washer. And when I asked the team, I said, I think the telemetry is broken. What it turns out was for that particular organization, and they shared this information with us, for that particular organization, what was happening was the dishwashers on a couple of the floors in one of their buildings were broken. And people weren't able to wash their cups, they weren't able to take their breaks, they were late back from their breaks, stuff like that. Now, there is no way you capture that stuff, systematically in the normal course of events. And people might laugh and say, that's a small thing. It is a small thing, but it's also a big thing, right? Because it's these pebbles in the shoe of organizational change that cut to the heart of it. So it's that rich, unbiased, continuous insight that organizations get. And that's actually from an organizational perspective, almost independent of engaging with the individual employee. Organizations are really starting to kind of resonate with that, going, say, hang on, you're telling me I can get these insights without doing surveys, without doing, this kind of, sentiment-based stuff, without doing questionnaires. And that's something that we're really, really excited about.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because even with that example, if you know the dishwasher's broken, there's less certainty about what you're going to do for lunch. And that certainty kind of drives a bit of anxiety because maybe you're catching up with your friends then. You get to have that kind of social inclusion, but maybe people start going out for lunch and it can all kind of correlate. So there's some pretty interesting stats. So on the engagement metrics, I was looking through it for research, 65% alert engagement rate and 6.3x return on investment. So again, that's really, really impressive. Any particular factors that contribute to these outcomes?
There is, and it goes right back to actually the previous question you asked, which is about what are the kind of conditions of success to really make this thing work? And it boils down to one thing and one thing only: leadership buy-in. Right? We can bring great tech, we can bring great examples, we can bring great frameworks. If an organization is not fundamentally bought in to making their place a better place for their employees to work, there's no amount of technology that can help you. That is the biggest determinant of success, because it means a couple of things. It means that leadership lead by example in terms of this. So they open those conversations around mental health in the workplace. They destigmatize it. They also make sure that managers, who are the cultural secret sauce of any organization, that they're the ones recommending this stuff, evangelizing this stuff, using the insights of it themselves as part of their organization. And then, that the organization builds those insights back into just the normal course of running your business, not as something that you dust down once or twice a year when you're doing an ESG report or something like that. So, if we've got amazing outcomes in terms of this stuff with customers, but the reality is it is literally based on leadership buy-in.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, like everything, there's a change agent component, and senior management buy-in is important rather than wouldn't it be cool snare and then people just lose morale. You just need to drive through within it. Ger Perdisatt, CEO of Lua Health, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Mark.
On the 26th of November, join us for the 6th Annual AI Awards at the Marco Hotel in Dublin. This year's event promises to be our largest and most impressive yet, with over 300 community members in attendance and over 48 applications of AI in action. This truly is an incredible world-class event, and we are inviting you to this event. Experience the excitement live, because we're going to be capturing this with a world-class film crew, and it's going to be streamed online. However, if you want to join us in person, book your table now, because opportunities are limited. If you're interested in sponsoring this year's awards, please contact me at Mark@AI Awards for more information and see the best in class of AI applications on the island of Ireland.